Stop, Olivia. Don't leave, please.
My ex is in there, Lucas, dancing with his fiancée.
Come back inside. Let me show you what love is about.
Tonight, Olivia Hart was trying very hard to feel nothing. She sat alone at table 9 in the grand ballroom of the Crestfield Hotel, watching her ex-husband Jake Holloway slow dance with the woman he had left her for. 30 feet away, in the same room, at the same wedding. Her hands wrapped around a glass of champagne she had not touched. She was tall and slender, with butter-soft, creamy skin, long, straight, dark hair, and eyes so large and luminous that people forgot what they were saying when she walked into a room. A senior content editor at Crestfield Media, brilliant at her job, and a single mother to a 5-year-old girl named Lily. She was the kind of woman who carried everything quietly and made it look effortless. She had worn red for this, a deep, beautiful red dress she had bought to walk in and feel like a woman who had moved on. She did not feel like a woman who had moved on. Jake Holloway. He looked relaxed and easy, the way a man looks when he has made his choices and is no longer carrying the guilt of them. His fiancée, Lauren, was beautiful in a silver dress, her head tilted toward him, laughing at something he had said. Olivia watched them for exactly 4 seconds. Then she looked away. She had lasted 2 hours. She thought that deserved some credit. She had come because Sarah was her oldest friend, and missing her wedding was not something she was willing to do. She had bought the red dress because she wanted to walk in feeling like a woman who was fine, a woman who had put the past exactly where it belonged. But sitting alone at table 9 while the man who had broken her heart danced 10 meters away was reminding her very clearly that you cannot buy fine at a boutique. You cannot wear it either. She stood up quietly. She picked up her bag. She told herself she would call Sarah in the morning and walk toward the exit with her head held high and her heart sitting somewhere at the bottom of her chest. She did not make it to the car. He had been watching her all evening. Lucas Weston stood near the far wall of the ballroom with a glass of whiskey he had barely touched, and his eyes had not moved from Olivia Hart for the better part of an hour. He knew her. Not personally. Not yet. But he knew her the way a man knows a woman who has occupied his thoughts for longer than he has known what to do with. It had started 3 weeks ago. An elevator. Tuesday morning. He had stepped in on the 14th floor and she was already inside, holding a folder of documents against her chest, looking down at her phone. She had glanced up briefly when the doors opened, and their eyes had met for no more than 2 seconds before she looked back down. 2 seconds. What Olivia had never told anyone, what she had barely admitted to herself, was what those 2 seconds had done to her. Something had moved in her chest the moment their eyes met. Something sudden and certain and completely uninvited. She had looked back down at her phone immediately, her heart beating faster than it had any right to, and told herself firmly that it was nothing, that she was tired, that she was imagining things. She had spent 14 months rebuilding herself. She had not forgotten his face, not even for a day. Lucas Weston, CEO of Crestfield Media, had run a company of 400 people for 6 years. He had sat across tables from powerful men and difficult negotiations and moments that required absolute composure. He had never in his adult life been unsettled by 2 seconds. But those 2 seconds followed him out of the elevator and into his meeting, and through the rest of his Tuesday and into his Wednesday and beyond. That face, that quiet, unhurried grace, the smooth, pale skin, those luminous eyes that had met his for just a moment and looked away, and left him standing in the elevator, wondering why he suddenly could not remember what floor he was going to. He had asked his assistant, casually, carefully, who the woman on the 14th floor was. Olivia Hart, senior content editor. He had looked her up, read her work, understood within 20 minutes that she was one of the most talented people in his building. He had wanted to find a reason to speak to her, a professional reason, a natural reason, something that would not feel like what it actually was. And then he had seen her name on the wedding guest list, Sarah Williams, whose husband ran the accounts department, and something in his chest had settled quietly, like a decision made without words. He had dressed carefully that evening. He had arrived early. He had told himself he was simply attending a colleague's wedding. He had not believed himself for a single moment. He had watched her walk in and felt the air in the room shift. That red dress, that silk hair, those eyes moving carefully around the room, finding her table, finding her seat, finding, with a brief flicker of something painful, her ex-husband on the dance floor. He had watched her sit alone for 2 hours. He had watched her hold herself together with a dignity that made something ache quietly in his chest. He had watched her stand up to leave, and then he had set down his glass and followed her. The night air outside was cool and still. Olivia was walking toward the car park, her heels clicking softly on the pavement, when she heard footsteps behind her. "Don't go." She stopped. The voice was calm, deep, certain without being demanding. She did not turn around immediately. She could still hear the music drifting from inside the ballroom, something slow and romantic that felt like a personal insult. And she could feel the October night on her bare shoulders and the very specific loneliness of a woman who has just watched her past dance with her replacement. "I don't know who you are," she said quietly, "and I would like to be alone." "I know," the man said, "but I couldn't let you leave without saying something." She turned around then. She had to. He was tall, broad shoulders filling a charcoal suit that fit like it had been made for him personally. Dark hair, neat and slightly tousled, and eyes, gray, steady, looking at her with a kind of directness that most people reserved for people they had known for years. His skin was fair, his jaw clean and strong, and there was no performance in his face, no rehearsed smile. Just a man standing in a car park in the October dark, looking at her like she was the most important thing in his immediate world. She recognized him. She had seen him once before, in the elevator 3 weeks ago, 2 seconds. She had looked away first. She had not forgotten his face either. "You're the CEO," she said, the realization settling over her slowly. Lucas Weston, the man whose name was on the building she walked into every single morning, her boss. She felt her heart do something inconvenient. "I know," he said gently, "and I know this is the last thing you expected tonight." He looked at her with those steady gray eyes, warm and unhurried and completely honest. "But I have thought about you every single day since that elevator, and I could not watch you walk away again." Something in her chest went very quiet and very full at the same time. "Come back inside," he said softly, his voice low and warm like a fire on a cold night. "Just one drink. Let me show you that tonight does not have to end the way it started." She looked at him for a long moment. This man, this impossibly patient, impossibly sincere man. She took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, gently, warmly, like they had been waiting for exactly that. She felt it move all the way up her arm. They found a small table near the back of the ballroom, tucked away from the dance floor and the noise. A waiter appeared almost immediately with 2 fresh glasses of champagne. Lucas had that quality, a quiet, natural authority that made things happen without effort or announcement. He did not demand. Things simply arranged themselves around him. For a moment they sat in comfortable silence. The music drifted from across the room. The ballroom glowed gold around them. "Can I tell you something?" Lucas said. "You can try," Olivia said. The corner of his mouth lifted. "I saw you 3 weeks ago. The elevator. Tuesday morning." She looked at him. "I remember." Something moved in his eyes. "You looked up for 2 seconds and looked back down, and I thought about those 2 seconds for the rest of the week." He said it simply, without embarrassment, the way a man speaks when he has decided to be completely honest. "I looked you up. I read your work. I told myself I was simply being thorough." He paused. "I was not being thorough." Olivia felt something warm bloom quietly in her chest. She looked down at her glass for a moment. "I remember those 2 seconds too," she said softly. "I told myself it was nothing." A pause. I was not being honest either. She had spent 3 weeks being very responsible about it. He was the CEO. She was on the 14th floor. It was impractical and inadvisable, and she was a single mother who did not have the luxury of feelings in elevators. She looked at him now across the candlelight and thought, well, so much for responsible. "When I saw your name on the guest list for tonight," he continued, "I felt settled, like something had decided for me." He looked at her steadily. "I got here early. I've been watching you all evening, and when you stood up to leave, I was outside before I had decided to move." He held her gaze. "I don't believe in coincidences. I believe you were supposed to be here tonight, and so was I." The ballroom moved and glittered around them. Olivia looked at this man, this careful, honest, unexpectedly warm man, and felt something shift inside her that she had not felt in a very long time. "Tell me about your first love," he said. "That is a very personal question for someone I met 40 minutes ago." "I know," he said. "Answer it anyway." She picked up her champagne and looked across the room at nothing in particular and let herself go back, all the way back, to a girl of 17 who did not yet know how much the world could take from you. "His name was David," she said. "He lived on my street. We were 17. Every single day, without being asked, he walked me home from school. Rain, sunshine, it didn't matter. He just showed up. Every day, without making a big thing of it," she smiled softly. "He taught me what it was supposed to feel like, before I forgot." "What happened?" Lucas asked. His voice was quiet, attentive, like she was the only person in the room. "His family moved away," she said simply. "We were too young to know how to fight for something. We didn't even know that was what you were supposed to do." She paused. "I don't think of him with sadness, just gratitude. He showed me what real felt like." Lucas nodded slowly. "Your turn," she said. He looked at his glass for a moment. "Her name was Clara," he said. "I was 22. She was the kind of girl who made everything feel like an adventure. We were young and broke and completely in love, and it was the most alive I had ever felt." He was quiet for a moment. "Her family relocated abroad. We promised to make it work. We were 22. We did not yet know that love alone cannot carry a distance Neither person is willing to close. He paused. She married someone there. I heard years later. I hope she is happy. I genuinely do. Olivia watched his face. There was no bitterness in it, just honesty. The honest face of a man who had loved and lost and made peace with it. You never married? She asked. No, he said. I came close once, but it was not right, and I think we both knew it. He looked at her. I have been waiting, without knowing I was waiting, for something that felt like that Tuesday morning in the elevator. A pause. Like something clicking into place. The words sat between them, warm and unhurried. Lucas, she said softly. Yes? Thank you for coming outside. You're the one who almost left, he said. I just asked you to stay. It was during their second glass of champagne that Jake appeared. Olivia saw him coming from across the room, saw the careful, rehearsed expression of a man who had prepared something to say. He was moving through the crowd with a directness that told her he had been watching their table for a while. Lauren was somewhere behind him, her eyes following him with an unease she was trying to hide. Lucas saw him too. She felt it in the slight shift of his attention, not tension, not hostility, just awareness. He did not stand, did not alter his expression. He simply remained exactly where he was, completely calm and completely present. And then, very quietly, he leaned toward her. His mouth was close to her ear. She could feel the warmth of him, the steadiness of him, and when he spoke, his voice was low and private, and carried just the faintest trace of a smile. Pretend I'm your husband tonight. 3 seconds. That was how long she considered it. 3 seconds in which she thought about 14 months of putting herself back together, piece by piece. About Lily asking where Daddy was. About red dresses bought to feel like someone who was fine. About car parks and October air, and a man who had followed her outside when every other person in that room had not noticed she was gone. She lifted her chin. Okay, she said. One word. Jake reached their table. He looked polished, put together. He had that particular look of a man who had expected to find her sitting alone, still hurting, still carrying everything he left behind. Instead, he found her laughing with someone else. His eyes moved to Lucas. A quick glance, a flicker of something he couldn't quite hide, and then back to Olivia. Olivia. His voice was soft, the voice he used when he wanted something. You look... He stopped, recalculating. You look incredible. She opened her mouth to respond, but Lucas moved first. He leaned across and kissed her, not rushed, not aggressive, not a performance, just a kiss. Warm and calm and natural, the way a man kisses a woman he has kissed 1,000 times, like it is the most ordinary and wonderful thing in the world. His hand came up and rested gently against her face, and the touch was so tender, so sure, that Olivia forgot for a moment that any of it had been a pretense. When he pulled back, his eyes met hers, briefly, warm, steady, with that trace of a smile, before he turned to look at Jake with the polite, unbothered expression of a man who has not been threatened because he does not feel threatened. I'm sorry, Lucas said pleasantly. Were you saying something? Jake stood very still. He looked at Lucas. He looked at Olivia. He looked at the hand Lucas had rested naturally on the table beside hers, close enough that their fingers almost touched. He looked at Olivia's face, and what he found there was not the grief he had half expected, not the careful composure of a woman holding herself together. What he found was a woman who looked light, warm, like someone who had put something heavy down and discovered how good it felt to no longer carry it. Jake started, stopped. It was good to see you, Olivia. You too, Jake, she said, pleasantly, evenly, the way you speak to someone you once knew. He stood there one beat too long. Then he turned and walked away. Olivia waited until he was completely out of sight. Then she let out a slow, quiet breath. That, she said, was either very kind or very bold. Both, Lucas said simply. He was looking at her with that focused, unhurried attention. Are you all right? She thought about it honestly. Yes, she said, and she was surprised to find that it was true. I actually am. They danced once. She had not planned to. He had simply stood and extended his hand across the table and said, "Dance with me," in that quiet, certain way of his, and she had looked at his hand and looked at his face and stood up. On the dance floor, he placed his hand at the small of her back, and she felt the warmth of it through the fabric of her dress, steady and sure. And they moved together slowly while the music wrapped around them like something she had not allowed herself to want in a long time. I've been thinking, Lucas said quietly, near her ear. About what? About Lily, he said. About a little girl at home waiting for cake. He paused. I would like to meet her someday, if that is something you would allow. Olivia pulled back slightly to look at his face. He was completely serious, completely genuine, not performing the right thing to say, simply saying what was true. Something in her chest opened quietly, like a window in a room that had been closed too long. She would like you, Olivia said softly. She likes people who are calm. She says loud people give her a headache. Lucas smiled, that deep, real smile. She sounds like a very wise 5-year-old. She really is. From the corner of her eye, she was distantly aware of Jake at the edge of the dance floor. Not dancing, standing completely still, watching. Lauren beside him, with her arms folded, saying something he clearly could not hear because all of his attention was here, on Olivia, on the man holding her, on the expression on her face that he had not put there and could not reach. She did not look at him. She kept her eyes on Lucas and felt, for the first time in 14 months, like the ground beneath her was completely solid. It was near the end of the evening when Lucas reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and set something small on the table between them. Not a ring, a key, old brass, worn smooth at the edges. She looked at it and then looked at him. It belonged to my grandmother, he said. She gave it to me when I was 20 and told me to give it to the person I was certain about. She said I'd know. He was quiet for a moment. I have carried it for 16 years. Olivia said nothing. She did not trust herself to. I am not asking you for anything tonight that you are not ready to give, he said. His voice was low and clear and completely steady. I am only telling you that I am certain that what happened here tonight was real and that I would very much like the chance to prove it to you. He looked at her steadily. However long that takes. She looked at the key, then at his face, then at the key again. Then she picked it up and held it in her palm and felt the weight of 16 years and one October evening and 2 seconds in an elevator. And she understood, fully, quietly, without any doubt at all, that this was the beginning of something. Ask me again, she said softly. When I've had a little more time to stop being afraid. He smiled, the real one, the one that reached his eyes and stayed there. I can do that, he said simply. She closed her fingers around the key. On the way out, they passed Jake. He was standing near the entrance with Lauren, who was saying something he was not listening to. His eyes found Olivia immediately, the way eyes find the thing they have not stopped looking for all evening, and then moved to Lucas, then to their hands, which were not quite touching, but were close enough. He looked at Olivia's face. Whatever he had been hoping to find there was not there. What was there instead was something simpler and more devastating. A woman who was thinking about tomorrow. "Good night, Jake," she said, warmly, without cruelty. "The way you speak to someone who was important once and has become simply part of the past." She walked out into the October night. Lucas fell into step beside her. Neither of them looked back. By 9 o'clock Monday morning, the entire office knew. Colleagues appeared in her doorway with wide eyes and curious smiles. Some whispered, because of course they did. But the people who actually knew her, who had watched her hold everything together for 14 months and never once complain, those people squeezed her arm and said nothing and meant everything. Lucas appeared at 10:45. The office went quietly electric. He walked straight to her desk, hands in his pockets, completely unbothered by every pair of eyes watching from every corner of the floor. He looked only at her. "How is Lily?" he asked. Olivia smiled. "She stayed up for me. She said if I came home sad, she was going to be very disappointed." "And did you? Come home sad?" She shook her head. "No." He nodded once, as if this was the only information he had needed. "Saturday morning," he said. "If you're willing. I know a place that does extraordinary pancakes. I am told 5-year-olds find this relevant." Olivia looked at him for a long moment. "She'll like that," she said. "She likes pancakes and calm people." "I know," he said. "You mentioned," he smiled. She smiled. The office, collectively, held its breath. He met Lily on a Saturday morning, 6 weeks later. Olivia had not planned it to be a big moment. She had simply opened the front door, and Lucas was there, and Lily was behind her in her socks and a dinosaur jumper, eating a piece of toast. Lily looked at him. He looked at her. "You're the one from the wedding," Lily said, matter of fact, toast in hand. "I am," Lucas said. "Mummy came home happy," Lily said. "She thought I was asleep, but I wasn't." "I'm glad she came home happy." Lily studied him for a long moment with the particular seriousness of a child who has learned, without anyone teaching her, to be careful about who she trusts. Then she stepped forward, wrapped both arms around his waist, and pressed her face into his side. Just like that, no preamble, no warning. Lucas stood completely still for one breath. Then his hand came up and rested gently on the back of her head. Warm, steady, certain, the way you hold something you already know you would protect with everything you have. Olivia watched from the doorway and said nothing. There was nothing to say. Lily did not let go for a long time. Lucas held her right back. A few weeks later, he asked her properly on a diha, Tuesday evening in February, not in a ballroom, not in front of anyone. In her kitchen, while Lily was asleep upstairs and the radio was on low and the washing up was still in the sink. He reached into his jacket pocket and set a small box on the counter beside the dish rack. She looked at it, then at him. "I promised you time," he said. "I think I've been patient." She laughed, a real laugh, surprised out of her. He picked up the box, opened it. A ring, simple, beautiful, a warm stone set in gold that caught the kitchen light and held it. And then, right there on the kitchen floor, he went down on one knee. No audience, no music. Just a man kneeling in front of the woman he had chosen, with the radio playing softly and the dishes still in the sink. She looked down at him. Her hand went to her mouth. He looked up at her with those steady gray eyes and said, quietly, "Olivia Hart, I followed you into a car park because I could not let you leave. I would like, if you'll allow it, to spend the rest of my life making sure you never have to walk away from anything alone again." She was quiet for a moment. Upstairs, Lily shifted in her sleep. She took his hand. "Yes," she said, simply, warmly, like the answer had been there all along, and she was only just saying it out loud. "Yes, Lucas." He rose slowly, slid the ring onto her finger. It settled there with the ease of something arriving where it belonged. Then he cupped her face in both hands, gentle, unhurried, and kissed her, not like a performance, like a promise, slow and warm and certain, the kind of kiss that says, "I have been waiting for this, and I am in no rush to let it end." When he finally pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. Neither of them spoke. The radio played on softly. The kitchen was warm and quiet and entirely theirs. It was exactly enough. They were married the following autumn. A small ceremony. Close friends, warm light, late flowers. Lily was the flower girl and took the responsibility extremely seriously. When she reached the front and saw Lucas waiting, she gave him a look of solemn approval that made every person in the room smile. Lucas watched Olivia walk toward him. His expression did not change. It did not need to. 14 months later, Olivia gave birth to a boy. They named him Aaron. Lily appointed herself his protector from day one and took that role more seriously than anything she had ever done in her 6 years of life. Lucas came home every evening and sat on the floor with both of them, never too tired, never too busy, exactly the father both children deserved. As for Jake Holloway, life settled its accounts, quietly, completely. The business collapsed, the money followed, the rent fell behind, the flat shrank, and the man who had once walked through life like he could not lose was now eating cereal for dinner and opening letters he already knew were bad news. Lauren was 29 with dreams. She had stayed longer than was wise, loved him longer than he deserved. But one Tuesday morning she packed a bag, left a note on the counter, and walked out the door. There is a difference between standing by someone and syncing with them. She had finally worked out which one she was doing, so she left. He was home alone one evening when a program came on. A profile of a successful editor, the presenter said. He looked up, and there was Olivia, on a stage, glowing, receiving an industry award. Lucas in the front row, watching her with an expression Jake recognized immediately and painfully as love. Then the camera cut to a little girl in a yellow dress, watching her mother with enormous proud eyes. A man leaned over and said something in her ear. She grinned and leaned into him completely. "Daddy," she said. Jake set down his cup and did not pick it up again for a long time. He had held something rare and good and real. He had let it go. That same evening, in a warm house across the city, Olivia was on the couch with Aaron asleep against her side, Lily doing homework on the floor, and Lucas beside her with his arm around her shoulders, quietly reading, completely present, entirely at home. "Mummy, is the moon a boy or a girl?" "What do you think?" "A girl, because she's the prettiest thing in the sky, and she still comes out even when it's cold." Lucas looked up from his book. "That," he said, "is the best answer I have ever heard." Olivia leaned her head against his shoulder. He pressed a kiss to her hair, quiet, easy, the way you do something you have done 1,000 times and will do 1,000 more. And it was everything. It had always been going to be everything. If you enjoyed this love story, please like, comment, and subscribe to see more heartfelt tales. Your support helps us continue creating the stories that make your heart race.